Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas.
Thank you very much for watching.
Okay, let's see. Today's date is March 22nd of 2022. I have, let me do this to pull this up here. Let's see, where are we here? No, I should pull this up over here, I think. Wanted to ask you a couple, some questions. Okay, let's move this over. Whoops. Okay, I just did something new and I haven't really checked it out. So, okay, now I've hooked up a second monitor, and this time I have both the monitors set at 3840 by 2160. Okay. If you're interested, the scales, I got it set to 150%. So I'm going to have, and like I have now, the OBS display over here. Now, I've done this in the past, but anyway. So I have the display now over here, the OBS display, so I can see my volume, the thing there. I can see my screen, and I don't, interfere with it if I'm doing something over here. It's not, I know what's going on. So, for those of you who, and there's a bunch of people who recommended like OBS to me, a long time ago, before I ever used it, And even after that, when I did use it and when I would sometimes use other video recording programs, things like that, people would say, some of you people would be saying, you should be using OBS. Okay, so for those of you who are really familiar with it, okay, I have the screen set for 3840 by 2600. I just looked at it, whatever it is. But I have the, the OBS setting, of course, to render it or save it or whatever at 1980 by 1020, whatever that setting is. That's what I've done in the past. I really haven't played around with. I wonder what you think about. Maybe you would ask why. I mean, well, why would you do that? What do you think about me doing 38? I should have written this down. Well, let me pull that up again. Where is it? Let's see. That was the... No, it was right click. Okay, right click, display settings. I need to write this stuff down. Okay, here's my Fisher Space Pen, which I've been using for years and years and years. I can remember there for a while. What was it? What was the pen that was so popular I fucking hated it. When I was working, okay, we've been in, let's see. I noticed it really when I was working, let's see, I was working at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, so that would have been about starting in 1975, I believe. Let's see, wait, I started at St. Joseph Hospital in 1972, I think. Yeah, I think I've been about 1975, working at Trinity. And was it a Spencer pen, ballpoint pen? I mean, before that I was using my Fisher space, my space pen, the one that went into orbit with the astronauts and even the cosmonauts eventually. But so I think it was a Fisher, and I forget now what, I even forget what it was. I think this one was, finally my pen that I used for years and years, well, I lost a couple. But anyway, like the director of security, oh, I can't find, I think it was a bishop. He, forget what it was. I lost my pen. I lost my. Well, probably I don't remember this, but I probably said, well, on your desk there's a whole bunch of paper mate. No, my pen, and I thought, well, and then there was doctors and other people. Oh, does somebody have my? And there were some reports of, I lost my pen, And I thought, I forget what I paid for this. It was not, and actually this one ended up being, I mentioned on a YouTube video that back a few years ago, oh damn, my space pen, broke. And then I got a package in the mail, a little thing in the mail shortly after that. My oldest daughter and her husband just happened to be watching that video. I don't think they watch any of my videos, but I mean, for some reason I must have mentioned vegan food. I don't know what it was, but anyway, my oldest daughter knew that, that's the pen that I just always used. And so she sent me a new one, so this is it. And I've had it quite a while. Several years. Anyway, okay, these people were, and these are fairly expensive. And I thought, well, these people it must be a gold-plated pen, because these people are so upset, just about crying, because they can't find their pen. And it turns out, I'm sure probably you could get a range, I guess you'd get one made out of bronze and one made out of gold, I don't know, but anyway, I thought, what in the hell? Then I realized, hell, my pen costs more than theirs. Okay, oh, yeah, I wanted to write this down so I could, otherwise somebody's going to tune in. Okay, 3840 by 2160, okay. Now in the OBS settings, I have it set up to, I forget what they call it, rendering, but this video is 3840 by 2160. But I have told OBS, to make it 1920 by 1080. And I really haven't gone into, I didn't run a bunch of checks or anything to see. Maybe I should, what do you think, if those of you who are into OBS, should I just go ahead and leave it so it creates a 3840 by 2160? Now the file's going to be larger, but YouTube will, when you uploaded it, it goes through all its crap and it creates a video so that when you log in, whatever you're using, what resolution it's going to send you, display. Okay, so the file, anybody have an idea how much, I know some of you will know math or whatever. Okay, so the file's going to be larger. And I think of course I do think I did this a couple of times. I'm not sure I even uploaded it. But if the file's going to be a lot larger and take a lot more time to upload and all of that, I wonder if I should just, of course I couldn't do it all the time, but maybe I should just limit my videos in general that are uploaded to YouTube to 30 minutes. Let me know what you think about that. I know there are some people who watch all of my videos and all the way through, I think. That's not what generally people do on YouTube. If you look at the stats and things, let's go ahead and let's see, go to YouTube and go to go here and then go to Premium or whatever. YouTube Studio, that's where we want to go. I mean, normal for, oh wow, I lost 5 subscribers in the last 28 days. It's unusual for me. I haven't gained, I have 3,000, almost 3,500 subscribers. And it was a slow process of, getting them. It's very rare for me to lose somebody. Certainly rare to lose 5. So, now of course, politics, I'm very liberal. So there are a certain number of course I don't think they even subscribe. There are a certain number of people who come and perhaps they think I just, I'm political. Because whenever you're watching the video, especially the type of videos that I do, if you come, you might watch 2 or 3 videos, maybe even in a row, and you'll say, oh, this guy's just talking about hospital security that he did, that he hasn't done for 22 years, or something like that. But no, whatever's going on around me or whatever I'm upset about or excited about, or that's what the video's about. And then also a thing that I know is really a problem for some of you, and I understand it. You'd kind of like to know what to expect, and I don't even know what you're going to hear. And as soon as I do it, it's kind of a problem for me to enter in any type of links underneath it or anything like that, because I can't. I made a video and I had no notes. I don't make a script. I have no agenda. I certainly, because I've been doing this since 1982, and I was doing stuff before 1982 of a different nature, but sort of the same type of stuff. But I'm certainly not trying to change anybody's political, beliefs or anything like that, but I may, and probably will, depending on what the news is or something, I'll probably comment that, hey, so-and-so is a terrible person, and anybody who votes for him is a terrible person. Actually, I wouldn't say that, but, so, but what happens is people do come, I get very few thumbs down. And most everybody, well, there's a whole bunch of people that do come and then will say something, like, you're a communist or something, to me, And these people, of course, don't even know what, communism is. And they don't know what socialism is. Well, they think they're the same, But those people, they come and then they know this is not okay. This guy is not talking about guns, shooting guns all the time. This guy is not supporting Donald Trump. This guy is, whatever. And then they leave and they don't come back. And that's fine with me, Although I have, and I've mentioned this throughout my video career, that before the World Wide Web was, invented, when I was online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making videos and all kinds of stuff. When I had my computer bulletin board system, and I had you logged in, there was a message board and stuff like that. I had a discussion, area for people that I had set up. I got the idea from another guy who had a bulletin board system at, he came after I did. I'm not sure if he copied, if he was, I was one of the first in Kansas City, Missouri that had a computer bulletin board system. I had to write my own software. And luckily the Radio Shack Model 1 computer came with a book, about the basic language, and I ended up having to write my own BBS program out of BASIC, and I didn't know any BASIC. I had the thing that came with, so when I decided to create, I flipped the page, okay, and then I found, okay, this command, if I write that in there, it will pick up the phone when it rings. Okay, the next day, if you called that number, which very few people did because it wasn't out anywhere, it would pick up and say, welcome to Howard's Notebook. And that was it, because then I'd have to go through the book. Okay, how can I ask for their, and I'd put that in. And that's the way I did it, piece by piece. But got sidetracked on one of my, anyway. Oh, I know, I was talking about message. Oh, anyway, this guy, Dave Hallis, a really nice guy, he had a major stuttering problem. And he worked at a hospital, and he worked in the beginning in the food service department. But he was into computers big time. As we all were in the beginning, but some of us were a lot smarter. A lot of people were a lot smarter than I was. And he learned, and then, the people there at work, I guess, in the food service department had, computers, of course, hooked up by the hospital, and I guess, they must have said, oh, something doesn't work, I'm not sure if they had a data but, and he must have said, he must have put down his, I don't know exactly what he did, but he must have put down the dishwashing he was doing, or the slicing of ham or something, and said, well, I'll fix that for you, you know, and he plugged in the power supply or something, you know, did whatever, but he knew, you know, and before long, he was, you know, the person that they were calling on, and then the word got around, and then the hospital was, you know, and then he was working in the data processing department. And anyway, he set up a bulletin board system. And, you know, I'm talking about at home. He did. And eventually, a cardiology unit there at the hospital, it was a big hospital, and cardiology was a big part of that hospital. I mean, in Kansas City, Missouri, I'm not sure about now, but back then, if you had some type of a heart problem, people would tell you, nurses or so, you should go to St. Luke's Hospital, you know. And but anyway, this large cardiology group of doctors, they hired him in to take care of their computer stuff or whatever. They did some type of research. They were doing some kind of research on something, 4 or 5 doctors, and Dave Hallis was writing the software, creating the software for the information and all that kind of stuff, you know, getting it in from the patients and entering it in and having it go into data. I don't know what in the world he was doing, but when they published their work to, I guess, the New England Journal of Medicine or wherever they published that kind of, maybe the stuff for cardiology goes, I don't know. But when the doctors published their work for the rest of the medical establishment around the world to know, you know, whatever it was, over my head, you know, listed, you know, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, and Dave, you know, Hallis or whatever, he got credit and at the top of the thing, you know. Anyway, on his computer bulletin board system, he set up the discussion thing really, you know, really well. I mean, I had set one up before him, but his was, you know, organized and well. And so I took a lead from him. And so there was 6, 7, 8 subjects. Now, you could leave a message about anything to everybody, or a private message to people, you know. But what I did was subjects, and I had no problem doing it. Now, a bunch of you people, a lot of you are going to say, how could you do that? And I had no trouble presenting both points of view fairly. So on, like, gun control, that was one of the, even back then, we're talking like 1982, you know, pro-gun, anti-gun, and I gave both sides of the, you know, even though I had a preference and a, you know, belief, both sides fairly, and then people could comment. And then I had a section set, you know, questions on abortion, all of the key subjects that are, I think, basically in the news today, you know, really, with both sides presented, and everybody could comment. And generally, you know, basically everybody was well behaved and nice. But the thing that I noticed was, well, there was one thing I added because somebody they were commenting about the best hamburger places in Kansas City, you know. And they were talking about the little hamburgers that are the little tiny ones. What was it? How can I forget that? In fact, we have some in the freezer right now. I don't eat them, but my ex-wife gets them, you know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Jim, it doesn't matter. Now on that one, people did change their mind. Well, we didn't have Whataburger. Whataburger? Don't move. I have pants on this time so I can get up. I'm back. It was White Castles. We didn't have any. But anyway, people discussed it, and they changed, some of them actually changed their opinion. Finally, we got a White Castles, and I just loved them. But people were, that was the only thing. And so I noticed that, and so that nobody, there was never ever anybody on birth control, gun control, or any of the 5 or 6 other things ever changed their opinion, never changed their mind. And I was surprised by that. But when I ran the computer bulletin board system for years and years, and then when finally the World Wide Web was, created, I moved. I still did, WordPress and LiveJournal and all these things. As they came along, I was there, to greet them and welcome them to their, But then when I moved my bulletin board system to the World Wide Web, I thought, well, there's tons and tons of, and so I'll just, my blog will express, my views, my interest, and all that type of stuff. And then people who are interested in that will come, and they can go other places for other, information. And I was mistaken about that, as I've been mistaken about a lot of things. What happened is I found that these people who before, like on my, probably wasn't all the same people. Some people followed me. There are some people who are watching, visiting who were logging in at 300 baud, back years ago, before there was a World Wide Web. But what I found out was, and I was surprised, and then I see now that that's a major problem, and that is these, all that we have, the opportunities we have for communications, all the things, people are not going to, people that are gun nuts, and by the way, When I got out of high school and went to work as a welder, I joined the American Rifle Association. I loved their magazine, every month, American Rifleman. Anyway, couldn't wait for it to come. I bought some rifles. I didn't buy any handguns. I bought some rifles. I bought a case to put them in, and all that type of stuff. But what I found, anyway, I had to. Eventually, I worked as a welder for years. I didn't own a gun. I didn't need a gun. I had a chipping hammer. Not for defense, whatever. Except when the race rioting started in Kansas City, Missouri, and that's when my wife and we owned a tropical fish shop for 4 years, and I had to go at like 3 a.m. in the morning to the airport to pick up a load of fish that were, tropical fish and stuff that were shipped in. I hated it anyways, and I think I did slide it. I wouldn't have had it underneath I did slide this shipping hammer underneath the seat of my car. I didn't need it because all I saw was a few police cars, and I didn't see any other, and driving all the way across Kansas City, Missouri. I didn't see any, at that time in the morning ever. But anyway, and let's see, worked as a welder, worked for the post office for a short period of time, all this type of stuff. Eventually in about what would it be? Let's say 1970. I started working. Well, my wife and I, for 4 years, we had a tropical fish shop. And when we could see, like the first, what happened was back then, there weren't any tropical fish shops that were like there were very few real shopping malls, but there weren't any tropical fish shops they were all like mom and pop things. I mean, when I say that's a generality, I'm sure. And I'm just talking about maybe Kansas City, Missouri, in that area or something, but so the first year we did great, during the winter time or whatever. And then summertime came. This was our first year. Summertime came, and nobody wanted to buy tropical, fish because of a lot of people didn't have air conditioning, and so we wondered what's going on. Why do people hate us now? They loved us so much. And then we sort of realized. Well, anyway, so the next year, when summer came, the same thing. But then we also about the same time we added pond supplies out, water hyacinths, that type of stuff, and nobody came. I mean, people came. A few people came for the tropical fish to buy the frozen brine shrimp, and this type of people's fish got sick or something, So let's see, it was pond supplies we added. The next year we added parakeets and some parrots, big ones, 1 or 2 or something couldn't. Anyway, we decided, I was doing and I could tell by the numbers, the ex-wife and I, or not ex, and okay, if our business doesn't increase by what, and she said such and such a percent, and I said then we'll, quit. She said okay. I could tell way ahead of time as we were going along, we're not going to make it. So when that time actually came, that morning when I opened up the fish shop, a local Protestant minister who was a tropical fish fan came in, He said, I think I must have said something to him about, well, I'm not sure, what we're going to do. And he came in and he said, how's everything going? How's the business and everything? And I said, well, my wife and I were going to sell. And he said, how much? And I told him, and he said, why don't you close and we'll go to the bank and I'll get you your money. So that was, but before the, as I was seeing that we weren't going to make it, I went out and I started. That was pretty neat. That was fun, but there was magazines. How to make a lot of them. Maybe there still are. I don't know. Magazine how to make money. Different ways. And there were magazines. People bought the magazines, and then there was things you could sign up for with companies. And there was a company that had a big catalog. They did printing. They had a big catalog. And they'd sign, you just contact them. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I sent them $20. I don't know. And they sent this, and on each page, the pages that were the business cards and then the stationaries and all that kind of things. And I didn't think I could sell anything. I mean, well, selling tropical fish, but I really didn't think. But so I just went out and started calling on businesses, local business. I didn't have never had the courage to, like, go to GM or some major place and walk in and ask for the purchasing department or something. I knew I just was not suit and tie. I couldn't. I wasn't a person who could say, well, if you buy 25,000 of these units, I can give you a 5%. I called on the small businesses, and they were interested because I'd been a small business person, and I'd say, you ought to have a business card to write the information on. I just did stuff like that. When they come in and they ask about such and such, write on the back of your card. They would buy. The problem was they were small business people like I had been, and it maybe would just be two of us, and they'd be picking out the type of, the cards they wanted, the colors and all this kind of stuff. A customer would come in, and I'd say, and then they'd take care of another customer would, come in, and I'd maybe sell, 500, 1,000 credit cards, really cheap back then, but good quality. And it was funny, that company, the way they did things that I was selling this stuff for, every sale that I made, they sent a check for that sale. So I'd go to my mailbox every day, and there'd be like 10 or 15 letters, things from this company. And then open it up, and it'd be kind of like the Steinfeld episode or whatever, where he was getting royalty checks or something from some foreign country that were like for $1 or $2 or $3, sort of like that. All these real small checks, or whatever. And but I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed meeting the people, and then what I also did was I would check up with when somebody ordered, I knew how long it would take for them to get their cards, and I'd show up and say, oh, did you get your cards? And, oh, yeah. And I'd say, I got this holder you can have for free, or maybe two, depending how big, plastic little holder, and you put your cards in there. And I said, I'm going to take a couple cards. And they said, okay, And then I would rubber cement them, matching up with the type of the card, the printing, the color, and put that in the book. And that really helped, because then I would go to one of the small businesses or whatever, and I'd say, now here's, and they'd say, oh, Smith's Secretarial Service, yeah. Oh, I know her, she, right down the road, yeah. I says, yeah, she loves that car, That worked out great. But the problem was, when I would go, it would take so long because the people would have, I wasn't going to stop them from, making a buck or whatever. So, and they didn't have anybody there. Hardly ever was there somebody else there who could. Sometimes there might have been a husband and wife, and the husband would be, he'd tell the wife, "Oh, you pick out, stuff," and then a customer would come in and, he would wait. But I really enjoyed that, but I just couldn't make a living at it. Oh, but as I was calling on these small businesses, I'd walk in, and they'd have the front door, plywood on it. And I said, "What happened?" And they said, "Somebody broke in last night." And there was a whole bunch of stories like that. So anyway, I told the wife, I said, I think the business to be in is security. And back then, there weren't a lot of, there was Burns, Pinkerton, Wells Fargo, and a very few others. And we actually started first I worked I hired in at Pinkerton, I hired in at Burns, I hired in at Wells Fargo, worked a short time, and saw how they did things and what was involved, and found out what I needed to do to get, and then we started a patrol service. And I was basically, I was signing people up, selling people for our service, and during the daytime, and then patrolling at, night, 7 nights a week. And then eventually I hired somebody in, I mentioned this in the past someplace, to patrol 2 nights a week, so I would have off 2 nights. By the way, we were using CB radio back then. Because, we were, but anyway, this guy that I hired in to work 2 nights a week, he'd come back, and I'd look at his activity sheet, and he, well, what, oh, the police asked me to help them. There was an accident, a traffic accident, 3 a.m. in the morning or whatever, and the police asked me to help them. Well, in the months and months that I had been doing it, yeah, there was a few times I found a car accident or a fire, something on fire or something like that, and I got on the radio. Actually, this is a violation of federal law, but yeah, that was CB radio back then. You weren't supposed to use channel 9. That was supposed to be emergency purposes only. Of course, I would call this an emergency, but what we did at night when the wife was going to go to bed, she'd call on the channel not channel 9, but on the channel we were using. Also, I had taken my radio antenna and instead of it being, this way, I had put it this way. It happened to be one you could actually, it kind of looked like a halo or something, I forget, but, and that made the polarization different. So on the signals, so I didn't hear a lot of the junk on there, people doing the crazy stuff that they, did by having that antenna. But anyway, what would happen is when she was going to go to bed, she would call and say, call, and we used the call signs. Later, nobody used their call signs. Your call sign, and she'd call and say signal 9, and then I'd say okay, and then she would switch the radio at home to channel 9, and I would switch my radio in the car to channel 9, and then if something came up. Now, I was in Kansas City, Missouri doing this. Kansas City, Kansas Police Department had a hell of a CB radio system, and they monitored channel 9. So a lot of times, which I did, I'd come up on a car accident or something, and then I'd call them, and then they would, pick up a phone call, or I don't know, I'm not sure how they did it, and whatever. But And all this time that those things would come up, the police would show up, and I'd say, I'd know, I mean, if it was just a car accident into a tree or something, and Now sometimes it was, some traffic or something or other, and there's a few times I'd say, do you need any help or anything? And they'd say no. They always said, no, that's fine. I said, okay, and I'd be on my way. This guy that was working for me, he was, I'm sure, monitoring the police channel or something and showing up every time, and Now, I didn't intend to get on this subject, by the way, but well, I don't even need to go into that. Oh, yeah, I guess I should. I ended up, I was at home. It was my night, he was working. And you got a phone call from, or get on the radio, get a call from him that's before cell phones, by the way. Got a call, and he said there's like 3 a.m. in the morning, there's somebody on the roof of this little tiny strip mall with, the little shop. Man, I'm not making fun of small business people with little shops or whatever, because, but it was, there wasn't much there. And he called and said there was somebody on the roof of this place, call the police. So I called the police and sent them, and I went back to bed, and then the phone rings, and it's the police, and they said, could you go to the location, and I said, okay. So I got dressed, drove over there, and there was a sergeant there, a couple of police officers, but a sergeant. Sergeant says, this, you own the company? I said, yeah. This guy works for it, and he said, yeah. And he said, let me show you something. So we walked up this, it was, that mall was in, it was a small mall, and it was very close to where we lived, And in fact, it was across the street from this little strip mall. There was a laundry place there, and my wife would take our laundry there and have them do it, and then we could pick it up, and it was all. But anyway, he walked up this little hill there, and the sergeant says, we asked your officer where he was when he saw the guy on the roof, and he said he was here. And I said, you can't see the roof of the mall from here. And he says, I said, I'm sorry, I'll take care of it. And he said, okay. So I let the guy go. I didn't tell him, but he was a lying sack of shit. But the sad thing is, for I don't know how many years and years, he would turn up. When I worked at St. Joe Hospital, I don't remember seeing him. Then I was working at the next hospital. The director of security did a thing which I thought was kind of a waste, but it's what the security directors and things tell you, what they're told. And, if you have a business, make sure that you have contract security that's on call, so you can call them and they know who you are and that they're dealing. You make a deal with them, and it was all good, that good information. But so anyway, at this hospital, we had every couple of years with the director of security. This doesn't work. Burns doesn't work. And I said, no, it's not going to work. They're not going to, their contract. There's a 200% turnover of these people. It's minimum wage job. I think they made it more than $1 more than minimum wage or something. Anyway, I said, you can't. But American Society of Industrial Security. I said, I don't care what they say in their magazine. You know, it doesn't work. But he made a contract with Wells Fargo, who I actually had worked for a little bit. And a car pulls up with a lieutenant or whatever in it, and the new guy that he's going to orientate to the hospital, to our hospital, so we could call them if we needed them in an emergency. And it's that guy who had worked for me. And so a few weeks later, you know, he comes down, not with the lieutenant or whatever, but by the way, on that day, the lieutenant went to show him the hospital. You know, you can't do hospital security by just having somebody walk you through the place, and, you know. But anyway, their sergeant was making inappropriate comments or whatever to the nurses, young nurses or something, you know. But we still had a contract with him. Then this guy shows up, and he's a sergeant, you know, the guy that had worked for me. And then before long, he turns up and he's a lieutenant. And then he gets hired in. I come to work. And the director of security says, oh, as I'm coming to work, this guy who had worked for me is coming down on the elevator. And I thought, uh-oh. And I go up, you know, and the director goes, oh, Jim, I hired that friend of yours, or whatever. He's hired in. And I didn't say, to call him back and tell him, you know, okay, you know, you're the boss. And it wasn't very long that they let him go. He was chasing somebody for something, and apparently he has superpowers because, you know, he wrote the report, and he went down hallways and all this kind of stuff, and he never lost sight of the guy. He must have had X-ray vision where he could look through doors and all kinds of stuff. And anyway, they let him go, but he turned up for a couple of different police departments that he worked for that I never heard of. They were small police departments. I was for years a reserve officer for a small police department that didn't have any police officers, you know. And I never heard of those police departments. Anyway, there's more to that story, but I got kind of sidetracked. How long has this been going on? Oh my God. Oh, almost an hour. Okay, I wanted to ask you about the OBS. You think I should keep it? Now this file is not going to be, because I have this set, you know, to render it at 1080p. But if you're a OBS person, what do you think? And also, if you're a fan, do you think that I should maybe limit these videos like to 30 minutes? Except there's going to be some things. Now I've mentioned it in several videos in the past here that you can find, but not the complete story. And as an example of that one, I worked at St. Joseph's Hospital. We had 2 security officers shot in the line of duty. The first one was shot, and one guy sprayed him with mace. The other guy shot him. They wrestled with him, took his gun when he fell. I've told that story, and I've told parts of the story, but there is so much more to that story. There's no way I could talk about that in 30 minutes. There's no way I could talk about it in an hour. I guess if I was going to till the guys who sprayed him with mace and shot him, he survived. That security officer survived, which was a miracle. Normally there would have been at that time of night at that hospital, there would have been an ER doctor. That would have been it. There wouldn't have been anything that doctor could have done. That night, 3 or 4, no, it would have been 9:15 p.m. Because the second shooting a year or so later was at 9:15 p.m. At 9:15 p.m., if you were in that parking lot, you were kind of like, you know. But a few days later, after Dan was shot, in the Kansas City newspaper, there was the 2 black guys in Kansas City, Kansas, went to a liquor store, and they sprayed the owner with mace, but they didn't shoot him, and they robbed him. So I read that, and I went in and told the director of security. I said, you know, these are the guys. These are the guys I'm sure of that we need to contact the Kansas City, Kansas police. We need to, no, none of our business. Now, he was a retired Kansas City, Missouri police sergeant. And that was the first hospital that I had worked at as security. And I just knew something should have been done, but he said, no, don't do it, you know. And so later on, very close to the hospital that I was working at, a security guard for a contract guard agency was working at a bowling alley as security. This was a bad neighborhood, by the way. I think I can say that. I think I could say it anyway, but this is a bad neighborhood. And I can say it because I lived in that neighborhood. This hospital was at Linwood and Prospect, so that would have been like 36 and Prospect. And no, it would not have been. It would have been, okay, let's have been 2,500. It would have been 26 because I lived it with my parents at 35th and Garfield. So you're talking about 5 or 6 blocks and then 1 block over. And it was a bad neighborhood. So then, when the first security officer was shot, also, one of a guy happened to be black, by the way, he started coming out in the parking lot and eating his lunch out there, talking to me. Oh, how's that security officer that was shot? How's he doing? Does he remember anything? And anyway, then a security officer was shot at the bowling alley. And then we had a second security officer who was shot at our hospital at 9:15 p.m., John Galegas. And he managed to shoot the guy that shot him. And I had already, when the first security officer was shot, now that I've talked about, but I told the director of security who was, or the hospital administrator who was black. I told him, you need to put a gate up here. That's where the guys came for the first shooting, or for the shooting. And whatever, and they didn't do anything. I told them what they need, 2 or 3 things that they needed to do, and he blew me off. And then when the second security officer was shot, John Galegas was shot. Then when the hospital administrator pulled in his Lincoln Continental Mark IV, I had some words with him, and I said, you know, I told you before you needed in here. You know, there's John's blood on the ground. Now you're going to do something. He said, no, Jim, maybe I'll get you horses. You know, get you guys some horses or whatever. And went on in. It was amazing. The doctor's parking lot was right there. Every doctor who came in, and they were coming in, you know, and I went over and I said, "There's John's blood." I just talked to the hospital, you know, and they all went to the administrative office, you know, and about 45 minutes later, the assistant administrator. I'd never seen him without his nose up the hospital administrator's ass. I'd never seen him separated. I thought maybe they were Siamese twins or something. He came out acting like, he wouldn't have made an actor. He acted like he was, oh, I guess I don't need to leave, Jim. Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you, we're going to get the bulletproof vest for you guys. We're going to put a gate up across, you know, there or whatever. And they did. And then, of course, it took them a little bit to get the stuff together. And I really admired those hospital doctors. They went in there, you know. I sent them in, and they went in. And that the hospital was getting ready to move, by the way, out of that neighborhood. The nun said it wasn't because of the neighborhood. It was because of the neighborhood. And but I got to admire those, and I told them, you know, those doctors. But I knew my name would be circled, you know. So as soon as at that hospital, all we did was security. No jump starting of cars, no snow removal. All we did was security. The next hospital I went to, you know, the director of security was adding everything for us to do. Pick up patients' property, lost and found, snow removal, all that kind of crap, you know. But, anyway, I hired in over at this Trinity Lutheran Hospital. My first day almost, I think it was the second or third day, between 1 and 3, a security officer had to go and stand at the gate, you know, to make sure only visitors got in or something. I forget. I think it was actually to make sure only employees got in between that, because the second shift was coming. Anyway, so I was there at the gate, and a car pulls in, and there's a black young man, you know, driving this car. And guess who it was? It was a food service employee at St. Joseph Hospital who, after the shooting of Dan, was coming out to the parking lot to visit with me and ask how the security officer was and if he remembered anything. And so he pulled up, and I thought he was going to crap his pants, you know. And he said, Jim, what are you doing working here? And I said, I just came over so I could keep an eye on you. And he parked his car, he went in, you know, I don't know whether he went to the food service department or whether he just went directly to, well, he probably went to the food service department and said, I'm quitting. And he quit. Later I told you about the, you know, shooting of Dan, and then the robbery in Kansas City, Kansas, and then the security guard who worked at a bowling alley a few blocks away from the hospital who was shot and killed. Well, after that, and then after this guy quit working with me, you know, we only didn't even get to work together a day. Him and his buddy were arrested a few blocks away from the hospital. There was an off-duty Jackson County Sheriff's deputy who was working, you know, security, you know, off-duty security. He got shot and killed, and of course the police immediately found out who it was and arrested these guys. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry I made this so long. I'm gonna try to do better. Forgive me. I'm gonna try to do better after this. An hour of this is too long. Thank you for watching.